to reach this highest Aries frequency of enlightened selfishness. That like there is truly an artfulness to meeting your own needs and what that allows you to do in the world. And if you've ever taken really good care of yourself, even for like just a chunk of time, and you saw like, wow, my energy is higher, I'm clearer, I'm more hopeful, my outlook is more positive. Like when I take good care of myself, when my cup is full, I feel better. Like, wow, and now all my interactions are better because I'm in a better mood. Like you see the ripple effects of like when you invest that energy into yourself first and foremost, that's not the end of the story. Like it's all gonna end up like spilling back out into your whole life. But first, there has to be this sense of selfishness. Hello, dear friends, it's Carly, and welcome to this video, this chapter on the Aries North Node, or if you have a first house North Node. This is the 8th maybe video in this 12-part series where I am looking at each of the individual North Node placements and talking about not only what they represent, but also how can they really make the most out of this transit of the North Node through Taurus, the South Node through Scorpio that we have going on from January of 2022 through July of 2023. So at this point, at the time of recording, June of 2022, we have over a year of this transformation that is still taking place. And specifically for you guys, the next nodal cycle that is coming up after this one is where the North Node will transit through Aries and the South Node will transit through Libra, matching your placement. So this chapter especially feels very intentionally placed and like a lot of deep processing and release, like what we talked about in general for everyone, how in general for everyone this is preparing us for this next cycle, but especially you guys, where then in the next year and a half cycle, you would be having your North Node return. And as we get closer to that, I'll be making a deep dive on that cycle and then also probably going back through the North Nodes again to talk about how can each one get the most out of that transit. The other piece I want to add in here specific to Aries, since we're talking about it, is that Jupiter and Mars currently at the time of recording are both located in Aries. So we have a lot of bursts of really fiery energy happening in Aries already. And so this is likely turning up the volume on you feeling the need to lean into those North Node patterns of behavior to correct the imbalance that comes out of our South Node. As Jan Spiller describes it in her book, Astrology for the Soul, the South Node is essentially the most over-exaggerated part of our personality. It's the most overdeveloped. So by nature, its sister sign, the sign of your North Node, is the least developed. So it likely feels like an uncomfortable fit to continue doing the South Node things. And we're going to get into all of what that means as far as having the South Node in Libra or the 7th house. So when we look at a South Node in Libra or a South Node in the 7th house, South Nodes in general, they have kind of two different halves of looking at it. So on one half, on one side, we look at the talents and the skills that you possess because you have so much experience on this end of the spectrum. And on the other half of the South Node are all of the shadow patterns, the difficult feeling aspects of the South Node, which are the reason that you're wanting to practice the opposite side. It's those shadow patterns that motivate the skills and things. So it's gonna be about figuring out how to recognize when I'm in my South Node. That is like really the best thing that we can learn how to do, is spot that behavior within ourselves when it gets going. So that's what I'm aiming to provide with you here, as far as like I have 4 skills to be thankful for, and then within each there are also tendencies to try to leave behind or at least become aware of how it feels when you do it that way. And if you want to continue doing it that way, even though it doesn't feel good, then you're totally welcome to. But the alternate side that we'll get into next, as far as the attributes to develop, there we'll let you know how you can lean into something that maybe these patterns on the North Node end, they do just naturally feel better. So I think as uncomfortable as the North Node can be at first, it really is medicine to our soul and the balance that it can create inside of us. And with that balance, inner peace. The first skill to be thankful for as a Libra South Node or a 7th house South Node is tact and respectful compromise. So you all like have an ability to say anything in a way that is like non-offensive, that is nice and gentle and easy for people to take in as much as possible, like basically keeping the harmony. And that's where that's a lot where the shadow behind this comes from, as far as there can be an obsessive attachment to fairness, Libra representing justice and equality, like that sense of fairness, that this isn't fair and I'm going to fight to make it fair, often done in the outside world. The preoccupation with justice in general, and really that the tact and the compromise part can come from a deeper sense of people pleasing. And we're going to talk more about people pleasing here in a little bit. The next skill to be thankful for is your grace and humor. So again, this can come from people pleasing. It basically comes from an attachment to this external harmony with everyone around you. That there can be a fear of disharmony, or worse yet, ostracization, like being ostracized from the group that you're a part of. And that really, like, the shadow is that the truth and authenticity can get lost in a sea of appropriateness. I'm not a Libra South Node, but oh my gosh, I can feel that on my soul of like being appropriate, like how you were trained to be appropriate, like what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. Like even just that concept, oh man, it reeks of Libra. And in this case, as far as like we are very much having Libra on the South Node, and as Stephen Forrest puts it in his book, Yesterday's Sky, which is my other reference for this series, is like when we're looking at the South Node, we're assuming that it is so far out of balance, and that's why the North Node is in this other end. So with that, we kind of have to, when we deal with the South Node, we are intentionally skewing ourselves towards like the shadow side of what can come from too much of this energy. If you're spending too much time in whatever particular archetype it is, what are the downsides going to be? I mean, there's a reason that we're all 12 of them, because each of them serve their purpose and each of them have their time to get pulled out of the toolbox and used in whatever situation. But when you spend too much time in Libra, you lose your own sense of truth, your own sense of what you think is right for you, your own sense of like, who even are you? If you took every single other person out of the equation, who are you? And that can be a thing with the Libra South Node, the 7th house South Node, is like defining yourself according to the relationships that you have. So like, especially with that 7th house South Node, like the example is like your identity is Mrs. John Smith, you know, like, you know what I mean? Mrs. John Smith, like you don't even have a name anymore. Like you don't even worry about your name. Like all you are is his wife. Like you are part of his story, not your own story. And with an Aries North Node, with a 1st house North Node, you are being promoted in a big way to the lead character in your own story. You're not here to be an appendage into anybody else's story. You have your own story to tell. You have your own path to show. Also to do with the grace element, as far as like you really do have that tact and that grace, from that Libra South Node or 7th house South Node, but it can also come from the shadow of basically having guilt over negative emotions. That like there's this self-imposed position or responsibility that like you just need to be fine. I'm fine. Oh no, I'm fine. How are you? And then you immediately turn back to taking care of everybody else. So that still kind of boils down into people pleasing. The next skill to be thankful for is getting along with other people and supporting their needs. You are very supportive. This is just something that you know how to do. It's part of your intuition as far as like understanding other people, understanding what their needs are. And as you're able to take in all of that information, there is a natural balancing that happens to create that external harmony. It really is beautiful when you stand back and look at what Libra energy is capable of in terms of bringing people together and then smoothing out the roughness so that they can stay together long enough to actually do something that's going to benefit the world. Libra energy is absolutely necessary. But again, the shadow that can be behind this getting along with everybody is one, an unending search for the ideal partner, like basically looking for your other half, feeling incomplete yourself and feeling like once I find this relationship, then I will be whole. It's my emptiness or my void inside of myself is the fact that I don't have my relationship yet, and that's not true. With an Aries North Node, with a first house North Node, there is a wholeness that comes from building that relationship with yourself, like pointing every ounce of that support, every ounce of that getting along and taking in the needs of, pointing all of your magic back towards yourself. And we'll get more into the attributes to develop here in a minute. But that basically the getting along and supporting others' needs can come from a shadow of defining yourself by others. And really, because we're talking about the seventh house, defining yourself by others' power. That like they are the powerful one. So the reason that we get along and we make nice in this configuration of energy is because if I lose them, I'll be in trouble. I don't have enough power to support myself, to stand on my own 2 feet, to find my own resources, to fight for my own food. I can't do those things. So without them, I'm toast. So I'm gonna play nice with them so that they'll take care of me. And again, with the first house Aries North Node, like that just isn't the recipe for success in this lifetime. And last but not least, because your South Node in Libra, this would be a little different, it's the seventh house, but the South Node in Libra is ruled by Venus. So the fact that your South Node is ruled by Venus means that you do have a natural flair for art, just kind of an artistic eye or specific taste, a good ability to put visual colors and fonts and designs and putting all of those kinds of aesthetic elements together. The aesthetic intelligence basically is high in Libra when you get to those higher frequencies. So what we're talking about with artistic creativity is creating beauty in the world. And again, like that is wonderful. Like the world can always use more beauty. So that, as far as a tool in your toolbox, is beautiful, literally. And yet, even beauty has a shadow, because when you get into kind of a mid-range Libra point, we're creating beauty on the outside, on the surface, to cover up the warts that we don't want to look at. We're hiding the inappropriateness of underneath by putting lipstick on the top. And that is a slippery slope. Again, back into you're losing your authentic truth in a sea of what you think is going to look good on the outside. There's a quote I'm reminded here of, instead of building a life that looks good on the outside, how about build a life that feels good on the inside? You know, this was my own kind of mantra in my early days of my spiritual path, my self-awareness journey, like whatever you want to call it. That there can be a denial of the uglier parts of life and wanting to use beauty to deny and pretend like it's not there. And so obviously, again, that's that slippery slope. So now we'll jump into the attributes to develop. So this would be the North Node side, the Aries side, the first house side, probably these are going to feel a little bit foreign, a little bit outside your comfort zone. That's really par for the course as far as the North Node is concerned. So if it's not that uncomfortable, like you're already well on your way. And that usually is the case, I feel like. By the time we are learning about the North Node, I think it's because you should be able to look around at your life and see how you are actively pursuing your North Node. Like you are actively leaning in that direction already. So I would love to hear in the comments, like down below, how you were able to see your own evolution better, basically, because of understanding like what even is the North Node asking for from you, and basically recognizing like, hey, I think I'm already doing that. So yeah, pat yourself on the back. The first attribute to develop, this is extremely Aryan, extremely first house, is self-discovery. In order to do your Aries thing, you got to know who you are. So self-awareness, self-nurturing is the kind of natural next step to Aries is a very young energy. It's a very raw and primal energy. Like think baby bird that just hatched out of its egg and it's hungry and it's squawking at its mom to feed it. It's like giving away its location to all the predators all around, but like it doesn't know what else to do besides yell for somebody to come and help. That's kind of that Aries energy of there is a need to, one, yes, discover who you are, but then learn how to be direct and state what you need out into the world. And not necessarily demand that you have to give me what I need, but to say, this is what I need. And at that point, if somebody, you know, let's say you're in a relationship in this example and you are coming up against your partner and they're crossing your boundary, or you're engaging in something that doesn't feel right to you, that you are able to say to them, here's what I need. This is the space that I am carving out, just letting you know. And they get to say, I'm not okay with that. Or, hey, no problem. And if they say, I'm not okay with that, you know, that's really up to you to figure out and to sort out on your side. And if you can't be in a relationship with me carving out this space for this thing that I need, then I'd say the relationship isn't going to work. You know, if the relationship isn't compatible with your needs, then you aren't compatible with the relationship and it's going to fall apart anyway. And as you get better and better and better at directly declaring like your needs out into the world, that you will naturally attract a partner who resonates with that. I have a thing in here in a little bit about, like, it makes me think of like a North Node in Aries person getting together with a North Node in Libra person, because like with a North Node in Libra, it's the exact opposite. Like basically you just don't want to be tied down. You don't want to be in a relationship. Like you and you have such a nice thing going on. Like why would you possibly bring another person into that? And yet with a North Node in Libra or a North Node in the 7th house, that's your job, is to like figure out how to get yourself into a relationship. And mostly those people are teaching how to be an independent soul inside the context of a relationship. And you guys, the opposite, the Aries North Node, the 1st house North Node, you will attract a soul partner once you are 100% whole inside yourself. And you are basically attracting that partner to teach them how to be supportive. And again, this goes back to your South Node. Like you guys are supportive. You know how to support it just as part of who you are. And basically when you're in your South Node end, like you're supporting others and you're waiting for them to support you. And that's not how your soul relationship is going to work this time with North Node and Aries North Node in the 1st house. There will have to be an independence that like basically your soul partner isn't going to be able to meet your needs. Like that's basically how I understand it, that your independence will be a key ingredient in the fact that this relationship can even work. Like they aren't going to want to enter into a relationship with someone that is needing that much from them. Again, think, I don't know if it has to be an Aries South Node by any means, but like think Aries South Node, where like they are allergic to relationships. So if you're gonna reel them in, you're gonna have to offer a huge birth of space and autonomy and independence, and like, you want to go on vacation by yourself this year, go for it. You want to like go, join this hobby without me, go for it. Like, cool. I'm over here doing my own thing. I'm over here doing my Aries North Node thing. Don't worry about me. I got myself covered. So this is what we're developing. And essentially what it boils down to is like, you guys got a ticket to figure out how to be selfish, like to reach this highest Aries frequency of enlightened selfishness. That like there is truly an artfulness to meeting your own needs and what that allows you to do in the world. And if you've ever taken really good care of yourself, even for like just a chunk of time, and you saw like, wow, my energy is higher, I'm clearer, I'm more hopeful, my outlook is more positive. Like when I take good care of myself, when my cup is full, I feel better. Like, wow, and now all my interactions are better because I'm in a better mood. Like, you see the ripple effects of like when you invest that energy into yourself first and foremost, that's not the end of the story. Like, it's all gonna end up like spilling back out into your whole life. But first, there has to be this sense of selfishness, this sense of knowing your needs and absolutely 100% making sure those needs are met. So if you are looking for anything in your life, like it is your job to meet that need for yourself. And relationship is a common thing that a Libra or 7th house South Node is looking for and is without. Typically that means that like you're still kind of in the South Node patterns and unraveling that and really figuring out why codependency isn't the best path forward. And if you don't have the relationship yet, I think there's like a good chance that maybe you're still unraveling codependency a little bit. I don't, it's hard to say on a video like this where you really don't know like what the situation is, but once you're fully independent and fully standing in your own power, everything comes to you. So, that's my 2 cents. The next attribute to develop is living a life that is fair to you. And again, this goes back to the point before about like, if you have needs, it is your responsibility to meet those needs and to secure outcomes for yourself where you feel like you got a fair deal. And that's on you. Create that for yourself. And that ultimately, like this South Node preoccupation with justice, that the justice you're trying to fight for in the outside world, like if you treat yourself fairly, if you listen to what you need and act accordingly, that will give you the sense of justice that you have been seeking all along. That basically, if you're trying to develop your Aries energy, or if your Aries energy is wounded in some way, like the practice that you're bringing your awareness back to over and over again as you make any decisions. The question is, how can I make a decision that best supports myself, my survival, my health, and my goals? So these are the top priorities, because you can trust that when you are on that path of meeting your needs and chasing your goals and following your passions, that on that path of you doing that, you taking that initiative to go and find the things and head out on your own and meet your own needs, do the things that speak to you. Like the example that Stephen Forrest gives in his book is like, he had a client who was an Aries 1st house North Node, so like both of them. And so that's like even more potent, right? And the example was that she was really wanting her soulmate, like really ready for her partner to get there. And she really wanted like a relationship where her partner enjoyed running in the mornings, because she like really, really wanted to do that, but it was dark at that time when she was trying to do it. And so she didn't feel comfortable going by herself. And so she hoped that when she manifested her relationship, that person would want to do that with her so that she could go do it. And she had been waiting for her person for a long time and wanting this experience, that she needed her person to be able to go do the experience. And through this interaction, through the consultation with Stephen Forrest, basically what opened up the new pathway, that the evolution that came, was she decided that, how about I post an ad in the newspaper for a 5 a.m. jogging buddy, and I'll interview the people who respond, and I'll meet with them if that's, like if it feels like that's going to be a good fit. And she had 4 people respond to her advertisement, and one of them ended up being her person, her actual partner. And so it's like when you stop waiting for somebody to come and be there so you can go do the thing that you want, you just go do the thing that you want, like take that initiative, the whole world opens right in front of you. So essentially what we're talking about is independence, right? The ability to go places and do things all by ourselves, and to want something and go do it, to have an idea and make it happen, to have a hunger inside of you and feed it. Like, it's just that simple. And it's when we look around to try to balance our needs with everybody else that everything gets so muddy. So this is a matter of autonomy. And within relationships especially, it's like the soulmate that you're going to attract as an Aries first house North Node, again, they are going to require their own independence and autonomy. They're going to need plenty of space and time away, and their own independence and their own freedom. And basically, like, that's who you are. That's who you're becoming. So once you are that, you two will be a perfect match. While they're off doing their thing, you're off doing your thing, and then you come back together and you tell each other your stories. And it's a new relationship every time you come together, because each of you are new. Each of you are on the leading edge of your own self-discovery, your own path of uncovering who you are, independently chasing your passions. And every time you come together, you each have a beautiful new story to tell. So these next 2 kind of go hand in hand. One attribute to develop is getting mad, and the other attribute to develop is courage. So I think these are like going hand in hand. They're going to rise together, because it takes courage to get mad. And especially as a Libra South Node, especially as a 7th house South Node, like we talked about, like there's a lot of your own security coming from the relationship or the relationships around you. And so to get mad, to express dissent, is a risk that risks the other person saying, you know what, never mind, I don't want to be here anymore. And that's essentially worst case scenario. Every time you get mad, every time you express negative emotions, you're risking the other person deciding that they don't like you anymore. And with that Aries first house North Node, there's an evolutionary like pin in the mechanism that like this is part of it. This has to be there, that radical self-honesty that says, this is what I need. This is what I need. I have to give this to myself. Like if I don't, then I don't have what I need, and I'm the only one that's ever going to meet those needs. So I have to do this. And if that doesn't jive with the other person, then that's not meant to be. The people who are not your soul family will absolutely fall away. They won't hang out. They won't stick around. They were only there because you were propping up the relationship. You were shrinking to fit inside the space that they had available. And that's not what you're here for this time. So the courage to get mad is, it may sound totally foreign, but it is absolutely super important with this energy. This is also helped by letting go of being a nice person, right? Like, you don't need to be a nice person. You have permission to not be nice. And actually, with an Aries North Node especially, there's a phrase that I absolutely love. I'm pretty sure it was Jan Spiller in her book where she talked about this. It might have been Stephen Forrest. I don't know. But the phrase is learning to hiss. So there's this old tale, and I'm almost positive it's Jan Spiller's book, but this old tale of this master who comes to this village and sees that there are no children playing, and he asks, like, where are all the children? And they say there's a serpent who lives in the forest, and he comes in the night and he eats the children, so there are no children. And so the master goes out into the forest and he finds the serpent. He says, come to me, and he comes, and sure. And he says, why are you eating these children? Like, you can't be eating these children. Like, don't be doing this. And so he's like, okay. And so the master comes back 10 years later, and there's all these kids playing, and they're all gathered around something, and they're poking at something. And he goes over there and he sees that it's the serpent. They've caught him and they're torturing him. And he gets them all away, and he asks the serpent, why did you let them do this to you? And he said, but master, you told me I couldn't eat the children. And the master says, yes, but I never told you couldn't hiss. And then I was listening to this Kahn video. I'm going to put it in the description box for you guys, because blew my freaking mind. I highly recommend it, especially for you guys. Love is the only answer. And like, really, self-love is what he's talking about. Like, it's unraveling all of this self-judgment, self-punishing, self-criticizing. Just, oh my goodness, it's so amazing. And he tells the story about, you know, if you were out in the wild and you were walking along and you come across a wolf and the wolf growled at you, you wouldn't think to yourself like, hey, I want to pet a wolf. I think I'm gonna go pet that wolf. No, if the wolf growled, you'd back off. The wolf didn't hurt you. The wolf didn't bite you. The wolf didn't assault you. Like, the wolf is only protecting its own space, right? Like, it just doesn't need you coming into its space, so it growls, and the other creature naturally knows, okay, okay, taking a step back. Sorry, you're good. Thanks for letting me know. I'm back. I got it. So that is essentially what you're learning to do. You're learning to hiss. You're learning to speak up for your needs and your boundaries, and to spot those opportunities within yourself when maybe you're putting up with something that you really shouldn't, just to keep the harmony, just to keep the peace. The bottom line of that path is really that it may end up keeping the peace in the outer world in the short term, but it absolutely does not keep the peace inside of you when you ignore your own needs and you bottle up your feelings and you ignore how you feel in favor of balancing everybody else's harmony, especially with this figure, especially with this configuration. I gotta think eventually you will erupt. It will come out, probably in not very helpful ways. And at that point, you gotta ask yourself, how harmonious in the outer environment is this? You know, like, if I would have hissed when it was just little, like, maybe they would have been like, oh, sorry. No, that's cool. Thanks for letting me know. I won't do that again. And now we're back to harmonious, and all you had to do was like one little hiss, and that's it. Addressing it in the moment can be that simple, but bottling it up is gonna create a larger disruption that probably is gonna end up coming out on the people you love the most. And that's, you know, that's the risk of bottling our feelings in general, but especially for you guys with that Aries North Node. Okay, so now we will get into how can you guys as Aries or first house North Nodes get the most out of this Taurus North Node transit. And I think the first one is that developing our Taurus skill set will absolutely empower your physical body. And that is definitely pulling you closer to the Aries side of the spectrum. It is also letting you have your own sense of power and stability in the moment, which I gotta think is going to be like a medicine, like a salve, like a cooling balm for any of those codependency issues where you're worried about not being okay if your partner were to walk away. Also, just self-awareness in general is shared somewhat between Aries and Taurus, because Taurus is drawing you into your right now moment, your five senses, your physical right now experience. And again, it's like you can't do that. You can't do that Taurus embodied presence and be trying to juggle the harmony of everyone around you all at the same time. It just doesn't work. I mean, it's a different approach to harmony, right? Venus rules both Libra and Taurus. So in Taurus, the peace comes from being at peace inside yourself. And when you're at peace inside yourself, your outer circumstances tend to reflect that to you. You tend to have a lot easier interactions. There's not as much to push your buttons, mostly because you've figured out how to make your buttons unpushable by finding the medicine and the cooling balm inside of yourself. On the purging Scorpio end, I think that's especially interesting. And I talked about this in general in how this purge through Scorpio is leading to the next purge through Libra. So I do think that they absolutely build on each other. And as we purge Scorpio, we are purging attachments to the power of others, which obviously is going to bring codependency right to the surface as far as like, what do you need that you think the other person is supposed to be providing to you? Versus like, if you're in an independent relationship or interdependent relationship where each of you is doing your own thing, you have a need, you meet the need. It really doesn't even factor into your process as far as meeting your needs, like what the other person is doing in that moment, because they aren't the vessel, you are. So this purge through Scorpio, I think, is going to bring up a lot of the interconnectedness that you feel towards being a nice person, towards supporting the other person, and being that self-sacrificial side of any relationship that you ever come into contact with. And obviously, at the same time, we're building Taurus. That's building up your own sense of power inside of yourself. It's also like that Taurus perspective is, again, very much bringing your awareness like back into yourself and like looking through your own eyes, like listening through your own ears, like smelling and tasting and touching through your own senses. Again, you cannot do that and balance the needs and harmony of the group at the same time. So this is all very intertwined. And again, I think does also, last piece, come back to that Scorpio purge, and then especially when the South Node gets into Libra, like letting go and really like transcending that need for finding your other half, like letting go of that path even being real, like seeing it for the illusion that it is, that like building Taurus is actually building your other half inside of you. Like that's really the goal, is to fill up any space or any doubt inside of you that you aren't whole. That is what is happening through right now, for sure, building Taurus, purging Scorpio, and then also as we get onto your guys' axis with the South Node in Libra, the North Node moving through Aries, like that will be continued, as far as we are very much stepping into a few years of getting really centered, really grounded inside of who are you? What do you need? What is your experience of what's valuable and important and secure in this world? And how can you provide that for yourself? That is basically the Taurus and then the Aries North Node transits in a nutshell, is like we are building our own foundation that very much exists under our 2 feet because we put it there. You know, like seeing how our effort and our energy and our attention on ourselves and our own needs absolutely brings us more stability, more security, more courage to get mad or hiss when we need to tell other people, no, that doesn't work for me. I'm going to do it like this. But I wanted to do, well, then go do it like that. I'm doing it like this. Like, stick to your guns. Thank you so much for joining me for this video. I have 4 left, I think, and feel free to let me know down below which one you want me to do next. If your Aries North Node is not in the first house, be sure to check out the video that is associated with the house, because that absolutely will add like a whole nother layer of context, especially if your Aries North Node isn't in the first house. There's like a whole different piece of this that also is part of the puzzle. And then also, I want to say, like, I have had such an amazing experience working with these chapters, like every single one of them. And I'm obviously only one North Node, right? Like my North Node is in Pisces, and yet the rest of all of these have given me a piece of my own evolution. And I would say especially the chapter like on my Saturn placement. My Saturn is in Sagittarius, so like the Sagittarius 9th house chapter was extremely helpful for that side of my development. My Chiron is in Gemini in the 3rd, and that chapter was so good. It like eliminated so many things. So I do highly encourage you to check out multiple videos in this series if you haven't already, and use them really to tell us like what does it look like to have a wound in one, aka the South Node, and to be wanting to intentionally develop or lean into or encourage the other lesser developed option to grow inside of you, aka the North Node. And really we're all 12 of them, so any of them that would be helpful for you, I do encourage you to take those in. And until next time, dear friends, you have such a great rest of your day, sending you all the best vibes. Take such good care of yourselves, and so will I.